Hey millionaire, imagine winning the lottery as a teenager. You could say that's the best thing that could ever happen to someone. After all, that means they're set for life. It's the kind of long-term financial security that most of us couldn't dream of. With that kind of cash in their pocket before they even reach college, they could choose to do literally anything they want with the rest of their lives. Or they could even choose to do almost nothing for the rest of their life. Doesn't that sound great? And if it happens at an age where you're just starting out, you need every opportunity you can get. And money is the greatest opportunity of all. Or is it? If you think about it, teenagers aren't exactly known for their strong decision-making skills. If there are any parents of young teens watching, they're probably already yelling about how kids that age can't handle any responsibility at all. Never mind being able to manage that kind of cash. If Michael Carroll's story is anything to go by, they're right. This is the story of how Michael Carroll landed a jackpot as a teenager and then totally blew it. British teen Michael Carrol was just 19 years old and working as a garbage bin collector to earn money when he got his big break. This was back in 2002, and it was a national lottery luck dip ticket that earned him his big win, and it really was big. He'd won a whopping 9.7 million British pounds. That's almost $10.8 million. Those of you who know about the lottery are probably thinking that it's not so much cash after you deduct taxes, but here's an interesting fact. Lottery winnings are not taxed in the UK. If you win, all that money is yours. Michael chose to take home every penny of his huge win in the form of a lump sum. Michael hadn't had a very good childhood. His bad luck started when he was just 18 months old and his father was sentenced to a stint in prison for stabbing a couple. He hadn't actually murdered them, but it was pure luck that they survived. It was a really close call. At the age of 7, his parents finally split up officially. You'd think getting a child away from someone who stabs people would be a good thing. Unfortunately, all of Michael's stepfathers ended up abusing him. When he was 10 years old, his real father suddenly died from a heart attack. Even though his dad wasn't in the house, this did have an effect on young Michael. His school life wasn't any better thanks to his dyslexia and ADHD. He was arrested for the first time at the age of just 13 for shoplifting. Winning the lottery was the kind of break he never imagined he'd get. At the press conference, when he collected his check, he promised he would use his new wealth responsibly. Maybe he meant it at the time, but unfortunately, Michael was young and that meant he was pretty impulsive. His promise didn't last long. That shouldn't surprise anyone. He wasn't exactly a typical lottery winner the day he collected his check. He showed up to the winning ceremony still wearing a police-monitored ankle bracelet which he'd earned committing petty crime. That wasn't even the first time he'd had a run-in with the law. He already had a long criminal history at the young age of just 19. What would you done with all your millions if you won the lottery as a teenager? Tell us in the comments, and keep watching to find out exactly what happened to Michael and his millions. Michael didn't help himself out either. He refused to hire a financial advisor even though he didn't know the first thing about money. Maybe he knew they would stop him from doing what he wanted. But they would have been right. Right away, Michael had cut his bank account down by $4.4 million. He did this by simply giving away large sums of cash to family and friends, starting with his mom and sister who got £1 million each. You could say that was a nice gesture, but they would have appreciated a lot less and his wallet wouldn't have suffered so much. He then spent another $478,000 on a 6-bedroom mansion in England. You'd guess he must have really loved that building to spend that kind of cash on it, but he didn't. He immediately started spending even more of his wealth on renovating the place he'd just bought. His new additions included expensive add-ons like swimming pools and a racetrack. I know that does sound cool, but not when you find out it cost him a whopping $445,000. After all that, he then spent another $1.1 million on a football club and another $167,000 on solid gold bars. I guess that last one was something he chose to buy just because he could afford it. There's no real use for having stacks of gold in your house. You can probably tell by now that his spending was out of control, but his behavior was matching up. He became known for spending loads of money on drugs and women. Plus, he was drinking 2 bottles of vodka every day. Oh, and there was also the $2,200 he was spending on cocaine every day. If you're thinking he kept those things for late-night mansion parties, you're wrong. The drugs and alcohol were often what he chose instead of a normal breakfast. He was also hosting huge orgies complete with naked women carrying cocaine around like cocktail waitresses. It turns out orgies are pretty expensive. The ones Michael organized were costing him an average of $55,000 per night. That's a lot of cash just so other people can have sex in your house. 4 years after his big win, he earned himself a 6-month jail sentence for causing a huge fight. His lifestyle was so out of control that a documentary was made about him around that time too. Remember all the sex workers I mentioned he was spending money on? There's one detail about that you should know. He was actually married with a newborn baby at the time. As you'd expect, it didn't take too long before his wife left. That was kind of expected with the way he was behaving. But sadly for Michael, a lot of his friends went with her. Even with all the free drugs, nobody liked how Michael treated them after he got rich. Then he started receiving threats. One day he returned home to find that someone had murdered all 5 of his dogs. And they were also sending threats to his family members. Do you think you can hit subscribe faster than Michael's friends walked out the door? That gives you exactly 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Michael might not have had anyone, but we're gonna be here for you now that you're a subscriber. Now, keep watching to find out if Michael turned his life around or if things only got worse for him. Clearly, things weren't going well for Michael. On top of all his problems, he was now flat broke as well. By 2013, things had gotten so bad he ended up homeless. His mansion was left in ruins while he was sleeping on the street. Finally, he decided he would move up to Scotland and try to get work as a manual laborer. Luckily for him, he found a job, but it wasn't a very good one. He had gone from living in a mansion to working in a slaughterhouse. He also found another job working in a biscuit factory. Finally, he settled on a job delivering coal. That doesn't sound so great, but it's still a step up from the slaughterhouse. Were things looking up for him? Amazing as it sounds, Michael's life suddenly started turning around. He says he's happy and he's enjoying all the freedom he has now. And believe it or not, his ex-wife got in touch and she's not exactly his ex anymore. They recently got remarried and they're apparently very happy together. She was happy to leave the past in the past and focus on building a future together. Some of their friends have gone on record saying the couple is very in love. But Michael said he wouldn't change a thing about his life as a lottery winner. He describes the experience as the best 10 years of his life, all in exchange for £1. But he also admitted he'd probably be dead by now if he still had all that money. I guess he's just glad it all worked out for him in the end, and he even got his wife and child back as a bonus.